The doorbell rang sharply at exactly 11:27 a.m. I froze, my heart pounding. There I stood in the guest bedroom of my son's mansion, suitcase still half-packed on the bed. I could hear voices flooding through the house like a torrent of water breaking free from a dam. There was laughter, clinking glasses, and the sharp click of high heels against marble floors. Garrison hadn't mentioned anything about a party when he'd asked me to come over at 10 o'clock. He said we'd talk. But instead, strangers filled his home. And now I was supposed to stay hidden away in this room, like some sort of secret he couldn't afford to acknowledge. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I smoothed down my worn cardigan, the one with a pulled thread at the hem. It wasn't just any cardigan. I'd chosen it deliberately. The fabric was soft, but the edges were frayed. The kind of sweater someone who'd lost everything would wear. It was my armor, the costume of a woman who had nothing left, who was desperate, broken. I looked at the suitcase sitting open on the bed. Clothes I'd carefully packed, clothes that screamed poverty. From the hallway, I heard a woman's voice rising above the chatter. "Garrison, darling, who's that Honda parked on the street? It's bringing down the whole aesthetic of the neighborhood." My Honda. My 20-year-old car, the one I had driven here instead of the Mercedes parked in my garage back home. It was all part of the performance, part of the act I had to play, looking like someone who had lost everything. I took a deep breath and turned my attention back to the door. My hands trembled as I pressed my ear against it. The laughter grew louder. Voices asking about the mimosa bar. I could picture them. Garrison's wealthy friends in their expensive athleisure, clothing that probably cost more than what I used to spend in an entire month just for groceries. Back when I still had to budget. Back before I found out about the $35 million sitting in offshore accounts in my name. But they didn't know that. Garrison didn't know that. Nobody did except for Preston Whitmore, my late husband's attorney, and me. And that's exactly how I needed it to stay. My throat was dry, burning with thirst. I'd been in this room for over an hour now, waiting, just as Garrison had instructed me. "Just make yourself comfortable in there until they leave," Sloane had said. Her smile had been so bright, so empty, like a mannequin in a department store. I couldn't stay here. Not anymore. Not for water. Not for the simple human dignity of being treated like I mattered. This was my son's house. I was his mother. And I needed to see his face, to see how he would react when confronted with the reality of who I was. The hallway stretched out before me like an endless tunnel. Only 10 steps to the kitchen. 10 steps. I counted them. My shoes, old sneakers with a coffee stain on the side, scraped softly against the cool tile. The voices grew louder, and as I approached the kitchen I saw them. Garrison's friends, maybe 8 or 10 of them, all holding crystal glasses. Their clothes screamed money, status, and belonging. They stood there, talking, laughing, living in a world where I didn't fit. I stepped into the kitchen, the conversation still going. It didn't stop. Not even for a second. They didn't notice me. I was invisible. A ghost haunting my own son's life. I moved toward the sink, reaching for a glass from the cabinet. And then finally someone noticed me. A woman in head-to-toe Lululemon. Her eyes roamed from my scuffed shoes to my threadbare cardigan, her expression cold. "Oh," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Garrison's head whipped around. His face drained of color, going as white as a sheet. For 3 long seconds he just stared at me. I counted them. 3 seconds. And then something shifted behind his eyes. A cold, calculating look that I had never seen before in the boy I raised. A mask slipping into place. He smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. "Oh, this is Marguerite," he said, his voice smooth, fake. "She's our housekeeper. She's staying with us temporarily, while we remodel her quarters." Housekeeper. The word hit me like a punch in the gut. He just introduced his own mother as the housekeeper. I stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. His words kept flowing, but all I could hear was the static of disbelief in my ears. The woman in the Lululemon smiled at me, the kind of smile someone gives the person who scrubs their toilets. "How lovely," she said, her voice sickly sweet. Sloane stood by his side, her hand on his arm, nodding along like this was normal. Like erasing me from existence was just another party trick. "Mom appreciates it, don't you?" Garrison's voice was tight. The smile on his face didn't reach his eyes. There was a warning in them. A threat. Play along or else. And just like that, the glass in my hand slipped. It didn't break, but it clattered loudly into the sink, the sound ringing out like a gunshot. Every face in the room turned toward me, and I saw it in their eyes. Pity mixed with annoyance. Like I had disrupted something important by simply existing. "Sorry," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm sorry, I'll just." I turned and walked back down the hallway, the tunnel of shame closing in on me with each step. Behind me I heard Garrison laugh. I heard him call me clumsy, and his friends laugh along with him. The guest bedroom door clicked shut behind me. I stood there, my back pressed against it, my entire body shaking. The room spun. I stumbled toward the bed, collapsing onto it, my head between my knees, trying to breathe through the panic. "Housekeeper." The word echoed in my head like a drumbeat. My phone sat on the nightstand. I reached for it with trembling hands, opened the voice memo app, and played back the recording I'd started when I first arrived. Just in case. I wanted proof. I heard the footsteps, the kitchen sounds, and then there it was. Clear as day. Garrison's voice. "Oh, this is Marguerite. She's our housekeeper." Evidence. Proof. But of what? That my son was ashamed of me? That he'd rather pretend I was a maid than admit I had given birth to him? Through the door I heard the party continue. Music now, upbeat and expensive sounding. They'd already forgotten about me. The clumsy housekeeper who had ruined their brunch. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan that spun lazily above me, feeling like I was being suffocated by the weight of my own existence. The room smelled like lavender and lies. It was beautiful, sterile, and cold. A guest bedroom that had never actually been used for a guest. Just a place to keep me hidden. I pulled my suitcase closer to me. Inside there were clothes that matched the story I had to tell. Worn sweaters, faded jeans, shoes with scuffed heels. All part of the costume. I was supposed to be a destitute widow. But now, as I sat here in this room, listening to the sounds of my son laughing with his friends, I didn't just feel poor. I felt invisible. Stripped of everything that made me human. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. But this wasn't over. Not yet. I wasn't ready to walk away from the truth. And I wasn't ready to let my son get away with this either. The test wasn't complete. I needed to see just how far Garrison would go, how deep the wall he built between us really was. Would he break me even more? Or would the truth finally break through? The next move was mine, and I was about to make it. Stay tuned. The real game is just beginning, and I have a feeling the fallout is going to change everything. Let's keep this going. Keep listening. Keep watching. Because what's coming next is going to shake you. The days passed slowly after that conversation, each one dragging by, like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I stayed in the guest bedroom, feeling more and more like a ghost in my own son's life. My presence seemed to irritate him, though he never outright said it. Garrison had made it clear. I was a burden to him now, someone to be hidden away, someone who didn't matter. And Sloane? She was just as distant, her bright smiles nothing more than a facade. 2 weeks. That's all I had left. I thought about that rundown apartment he'd shown me, the one with the bars on the windows. The thought of living there, in a place where I'd have to lock every door behind me in fear for my safety, made my stomach churn. But I was still pretending to be grateful, pretending to be fine. For now at least. But the truth was I wasn't fine. Not by a long shot. Every time I thought about that apartment, about how Garrison and Sloane were already discussing how to get rid of me, my chest tightened. It hurt more than I could explain. How could he do this to me? How could he erase me so completely? I spent a lot of time in my room, staring at the walls, trying to think clearly, to find the strength to do what I needed to do. It wasn't just about proving a point anymore. It was about seeing how far he would go, how deep the betrayal ran. The silence between us was suffocating. I hadn't heard from Garrison in days. Not a phone call, not a message. He hadn't even asked how I was. I was nothing to him now, just the woman who used to be his mother, now reduced to the status of a burden. But I couldn't just let it go. Not after everything. Not after all the sacrifices I had made for him, for his father, for our family. This wasn't the life I had imagined for my golden boy. The one I had spent my whole life loving and caring for. No, this wasn't him. This was someone else. Someone unrecognizable. I couldn't stay here any longer, not without doing something. I needed to see the truth for myself, but more than that, I needed to take control. If Garrison wasn't going to care, I was going to do something that would finally show me who he really was. Then it happened. On Monday morning, I was sitting by the window, looking out at the Arizona sun rising over the mountains, when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered it anyway. It was Preston. "Marguerite, I've got everything set up," he said, his voice steady, almost too calm. "The trust is locked in place. The documentation is all ready. But, are you sure about this?" The question hit me harder than I expected. Was I sure? Sure about what? Sure about testing my son? About confronting the reality of our broken relationship? I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm sure. I've waited long enough. It's time." I hung up the phone and sat there for a moment, letting the weight of my decision sink in. I was about to change everything. And Garrison? He wouldn't see it coming. That afternoon, I went to the closet and pulled out the outfit I had hidden at the bottom of my suitcase. I hadn't worn it in years, not since before Bernard passed away. Black slacks, a silk blouse, and the diamond earrings Bernard had given me on our 20th anniversary. I hadn't wanted to wear them before. I didn't feel like I deserved them, but now I was ready. I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She was strong. She was ready. She wasn't the broken woman Garrison and Sloane had tried to erase. No, she was someone with a purpose. I drove to Preston's office, the journey feeling like a small victory. I knew Garrison wouldn't understand. He didn't understand me anymore, and that was something I couldn't change. At Preston's office, I sat down across from his desk, my heart racing as I waited. I had a feeling that today, everything would finally be laid bare. The door opened promptly at 10 a.m. Garrison walked in first, his eyes immediately scanning the room. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in weeks. His eyes widened. He wasn't expecting this. He wasn't expecting me to look like myself again. Sloane followed. Her expression a mixture of confusion and annoyance. She didn't know what to make of me. I could see it in her eyes. Preston smiled and gestured for them to sit. The air was thick with tension. "We're here to discuss Bernard's estate," Preston began, his voice cold and businesslike. "Specifically, what Bernard left to his widow." Garrison opened his mouth, ready to speak, but Preston held up a hand. "I'd appreciate it if you'd remain quiet and listen." Garrison immediately shut his mouth, and Sloane squeezed his hand on the armrest. Preston slid a folder across the desk. "These are the official documents," he said. "Bank statements, offshore accounts, investments. The total valuation of Bernard's estate is $35 million. All of it inherited by his widow, Marguerite Castellano." I watched as Garrison's face drained of color. He picked up the paper, his eyes scanning the numbers. He blinked, clearly confused. "What is this?" he whispered. Sloane grabbed the paper, her eyes widening. "This can't be real." "It is," Preston said, his voice hardening. "It's very real." Preston pulled out more documents. "I'm going to show you exactly what Bernard's legacy looked like. And Garrison, I want you to pay attention." With that, Preston slid the first document across the desk, one that had my son's name written all over it. I took a deep breath, the weight of everything that had happened between us settling in my chest. This was the moment I would finally get my answers, and the moment Garrison's world would change forever. Stay tuned. The truth is about to come crashing down, and it's going to be a reckoning no one expects. Keep listening, because what happens next will change everything. The room was silent, so still you could almost hear the thoughts racing through Garrison's mind as he looked at the documents in front of him. His eyes flicked from the papers to me, then to Preston. His mouth opened and closed as though he were trying to find the words, but none came. "What is this?" he finally managed, his voice low, strained. He turned to Sloane as though seeking some sort of reassurance, but Sloane was staring at the paperwork with wide eyes, her mouth slightly agape. She didn't know what to make of this. Neither of them did. Preston didn't give them the chance to speak. He slid more documents across the desk, statements showing investments in tech stocks, real estate portfolios, cryptocurrency. Garrison's eyes darted over them, confusion slowly giving way to something darker. The calculation was clear now, the greed rising in his gaze, and I could see it, the shift in him. The person who had once been my son, the boy who loved me, was gone. I don't understand, Garrison stammered, still holding the paper with shaking hands. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ever say anything? I leaned forward, my voice steady as I finally answered him. Because I wanted to test you, Garrison, I said quietly. I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become. I wanted to see if you cared enough to notice that I was still here. Garrison blinked, the words clearly not registering at first. Test me? What are you talking about? He shook his head, frustration evident in his tone. I wanted to see if you cared about me. I repeated, every word heavy with truth. Not because of the money, but because I'm your mother. And when I needed you, when I came to you, your response was to hide me away, to pretend I wasn't even there. To make me feel like a burden. Sloane crossed her arms, her face flushed red. This is ridiculous. We've been trying to help you, Marguerite. You're the one who's been hiding behind some act. We didn't know what else to do. I ignored her, my gaze fixed on Garrison. You know what's worse than losing everything? I asked, my voice cold. It's realizing that the person you've spent your life loving, the one you raised, doesn't see you as a mother anymore. He sees you as a problem to be discarded. The words hung heavy in the air, and I could see Garrison's face change. The horror, the disbelief, and then the unmistakable shame. It was there plain as day. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to let him off the hook. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and hit play. The sound of Garrison's voice filled the room, and I watched as his face drained of color. Oh, this is Marguerite. She's our housekeeper. His voice echoed from the speaker. A soft gasp left Sloane's lips, her hand covering her mouth as she looked at me. I played another recording. Yeah, my mom's staying with us. Total nightmare. She lost everything when Dad died. Turns out he was horrible with money. The words cut through the room, each one sharper than the last. Garrison recoiled as though he had been slapped. What is this? He whispered, his voice cracking. This is the truth, Garrison, I said, my tone unwavering. This is what you said when you thought I wasn't listening. This is how you spoke about me. Your own mother. The woman who raised you. I let the silence stretch, watching him squirm under the weight of his own actions. His eyes darted from the recordings to the documents in front of him, the weight of it all crashing down on him. Preston cleared his throat and leaned forward. Marguerite has been staying in your home for 2 weeks now, and she's documented everything. Every moment of neglect, every instance of emotional abuse, and financial abandonment. He pulled out another folder, opening it with a deliberate slowness. These are time-stamped and verified. The house rules you gave her. Quiet hours after 9 p.m., no using the main bathroom, no touching the thermostat, only shopping for personal items. He glanced at Garrison. The suggestion of a rundown apartment. The pressure to leave. You've left a trail, Garrison. And now you have to face the consequences. Garrison stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is insane, he shouted, his voice rising. You lied to me. You set all of this up. I did, I said simply. Because I needed to see who you had become. I needed to know if the son I raised was still there. Or if I had lost him forever. Sloane stood up too, her hands trembling. You're punishing him for everything? For trying to make the best of a hard situation? For being honest with you? I looked her in the eye. No, Sloane. I'm punishing him for pretending I didn't exist. For introducing me as the housekeeper. For treating me like a problem to solve. I raised a son who used to bring me flowers, sunshine flowers as he called them. And now I'm staring at a stranger who would sell me out in a heartbeat. Garrison's face twisted with frustration, then anger. So what now? You're going to walk away with everything? You're going to punish me for trying to live my life? He took a step toward me. This is all about the money, isn't it? No, Garrison, I said, standing tall. This is about you failing the test. You didn't just fail to be a son to me, you erased me. You erased everything we had. And that is something money can't fix. I turned toward Preston, who nodded, pulling out one last document. As for the rest of the money, Preston said, his voice quiet but firm, Marguerite has decided to establish 2 education trusts, one for Breen and one for Annesley. Each trust contains $1 million, and it's for their education only. Neither you nor Sloane will be able to touch these funds. Garrison's jaw dropped. What? You're giving my kids money but not me. I smiled, the bitter taste of it sharp in my mouth. I'm giving them a chance. I'm giving them an opportunity. Something you never gave me. Preston slid another document across the desk, and Garrison's eyes narrowed as he read. I'm also donating $10 million to organizations that help elderly people who've been abandoned by their families. People like me. Sloane gasped. Abandoned? You can't possibly think we abandoned you. I looked at her, my gaze unyielding. You introduced me as the help. That's what you did, Sloane. And now I'm going to use my wealth to help people who have been left behind. People who haven't been treated like burdens but like people. I stood up, gathering my things, preparing to leave. As I reached for the door, Garrison's voice stopped me. Mom, please, he pleaded, his face twisted in confusion. We can work this out. We can fix this. I turned back to face him one last time. No, we can't. You've already shown me who you are, Garrison. The saddest part isn't that you failed the test. It's that you never even knew you were being tested. A real son wouldn't have needed one. I left the office, walking out into the bright Arizona sun. I didn't look back. The truth had come out. And now my life was mine again. Stay tuned. The story isn't over. Garrison's actions may have sealed his fate, but this is just the beginning of what's to come. Keep watching. Keep listening. Because the next chapter will reveal even more. The drive home from Preston's office felt different than any other drive I'd made in years. It wasn't just the Arizona sun beating down through the windshield or the soft hum of the car that had once felt so familiar. No, this time there was a weight to my every movement, like I was stepping into a new life, one that was finally mine to claim. Garrison's voice still echoed in my mind. His confusion, his anger. He didn't understand what had just happened. And Sloane? She was just as clueless. They thought they could erase me, hide me away like an inconvenient detail in their picture-perfect life. But what they didn't know was that I had always been far more than they ever gave me credit for. I wasn't just a mother who had raised her son. I wasn't just some forgotten woman living in the shadows of their success. I was someone who had a life, who had worth, who had been ignored and mistreated, but never broken. And now I was free. I didn't need them anymore. As I pulled into the driveway of my new condo, I couldn't help but smile. The top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Views of the entire valley. It was everything Bernard and I had dreamed of but never got to experience. The space was empty now, but it was mine. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. I stepped inside, my shoes clicking softly against the polished hardwood floors. The place smelled new, untouched. I walked across the room, standing at the large windows, letting my eyes take in the view. The city sprawled out before me, a maze of light and promise. I could already picture myself here, living on my own terms. I could almost feel the weight of the freedom settling in, filling the empty spaces inside me. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I wasn't going to live in their shadows. I was going to live for me. But even as I embraced this new chapter, the reality of what had happened with Garrison, with Sloane, lingered like a shadow in the back of my mind. I still couldn't shake the image of Garrison's face when he saw the truth for what it was. The money, the lies, the betrayal. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive him, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. As I unpacked my suitcase and laid out my clothes in the empty closet, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Preston. You sure you're okay? I know this is a lot to take in. I read the message and took a deep breath. He was right. It was a lot. I had just turned my entire life upside down, and now I was supposed to navigate this new reality. I texted back. I'm fine. It's just a lot of emotions right now. I set my phone down and looked around the condo. This was my space now. My new beginning. The life that Bernard and I never got to have. The life I had spent so long dreaming about. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about proving anything to Garrison. It was about me finally living for me. The next morning I woke up early, the sunlight pouring through the windows, warming the hardwood floors beneath my feet. The city was waking up outside, but inside it was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in ages I felt at ease. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen island, staring out at the view. But then the phone rang again. I let it ring twice before I picked up. It was from Garrison. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to answer. What was left to say? What more could he possibly say to me now? I swiped to answer, holding my breath as I waited. Mom, it's me. Garrison's voice was softer now, almost tentative. I need to talk to you. I closed my eyes. I knew what this was. It was the apology that had been coming for days. But it wasn't enough. Not after everything. I don't know if I'm ready for that conversation, Garrison, I said, my voice steady but full of weight. You made your choices. And now I have to live with mine. He stopped, a breath of frustration escaping his mouth. I get it. I really do. I've been thinking about everything. I know I messed up. I don't even know how I got to this point. How I could have been so cold. I wanted to believe him. I really did. I wanted to hear that the son I raised was still in there somewhere. But I wasn't sure I could ever go back to that. You were never really here, Garrison, I said quietly. You weren't here when I needed you. You weren't here when I asked for help. You were too busy with your life to even notice I was slipping through your fingers. Mom, I'm sorry. His voice cracked, and I could hear the desperation in it now. I've been horrible. I see that now. I'm sorry. I held the phone tightly, my heart torn in two. I wanted to say the words that would fix everything. I wanted to tell him I forgave him. But I knew deep down that forgiveness wasn't something that could be given in a moment. Not after what he'd done. I can't just forget what happened, Garrison, I said softly. I can't forget that you erased me. You treated me like I didn't matter. And that hurt more than anything. I know. And I don't expect you to forget. I want to try. I want to try to make things right, Mom. Please. The silence stretched between us, and I felt the weight of the moment settle in. Could I forgive him? Could I let go of everything I had just learned? I didn't know the answer. Not yet. But I knew I couldn't do it alone. I'll think about it, Garrison, I said quietly, my heart heavy. But it's going to take time. A lot of time. He didn't respond right away. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. Okay, he said finally. I'll give you the space you need. I just want you to know. I'm sorry. And I love you. I sat in silence for a moment, the weight of those words sinking in. I love you too, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. And with that, the call ended. I sat there staring at the phone in my hand. The road to healing was long. I didn't know if I could ever fully heal from the wounds Garrison had inflicted, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the woman who would let herself be erased. I was no longer the woman who would hide in the shadows. I was reclaiming my life. And nothing, not even my son, could take that from me. The story isn't over. What happens next? Does Garrison's apology come too late? And will I ever be able to fully forgive him for what he's done? Stay with me because this journey is far from finished. Keep watching because you won't want to miss what comes next. The days that followed Garrison's call were a strange mixture of clarity and confusion. I had been living in this new condo for almost a week, and with each passing day, I felt the weight of the past lifting just a little more. But it wasn't easy. Every corner of this place, every quiet moment made me think of what I'd lost. The family I thought I knew, the son I thought I raised. It was hard not to feel a gnawing ache in my chest. A longing for the days when things were simple, before the lies, before the betrayal. But there was something else stirring inside me now. A new strength. A sense of independence that had been buried for so long under layers of duty and sacrifice. And as much as it hurt to admit it, that strength had come from the very thing that broke me, my son. I spent the next few days navigating this new life, figuring out what it meant to live for myself. I started filling the condo with pieces of my own history. Photographs of Bernard and me, memories of our life together. The little things that had always been so important to me. The vase we had bought on our first trip to Paris, the framed pictures of our grandkids, the worn leather journal where I had written down all of my thoughts over the years. It was the first time in so long that I allowed myself to truly breathe. The walls weren't closing in anymore. The house wasn't a prison. It was a space where I could finally heal, or at least try to. But even in this new chapter, my mind kept drifting back to Garrison. I thought about that call, his words still ringing in my ears. "I'm sorry. I see that now. I've been horrible." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that somewhere beneath all the hurt, he was still my son, the same boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard and call them sunshine flowers. But the truth was he had hurt me in ways I couldn't ignore. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the way he had erased me from his life, as though I was nothing. He had chosen a life with Sloan, with his friends, with everything that represented success and status, while I had been left in the shadows. And yet, in his voice there was something different now. There was genuine regret. He was trying to reach out, trying to reconnect. But could I trust him again? That night, after another quiet dinner alone in my new condo, I heard the familiar buzz of my phone. It was a message from Garrison. "Mom, I've been thinking. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to show you that I'm trying to change. Can we meet? Just the two of us. I want to fix things between us." I stared at the message for a long moment. The weight of his words settled into my chest. It was the first time in weeks that I felt a flicker of hope, that tiny stubborn part of me that wanted to believe in redemption. But it was hard. So hard. Could I really open myself up to him again after everything? Could I risk it? Was I ready to forgive him for the hurt he had caused? I paced around the condo, my mind a whirlwind of doubt and indecision. I wasn't ready to let my guard down, not completely. But I also knew that holding on to anger and resentment wouldn't help me heal. I couldn't let it consume me. I texted back, "Okay, we can meet. But I need time. I'm not ready to just pick up where we left off." He replied almost immediately, "I understand. Just whenever you're ready. I'll wait." And that was it. The decision had been made. I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo. This place between hurt and healing. I had to face it even if it scared me. The next morning, I went to the kitchen to make my usual coffee when I heard a soft knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat and I froze. Was it him? I opened the door and there he was, Garrison, standing in front of me. His hands were shoved into the pockets of his jacket, his eyes guarded. He looked different. Smaller somehow, like the weight of everything had finally caught up to him. "I didn't want to just send a message," he said, his voice low. "I wanted to see you in person. To tell you everything I've been feeling." I stepped aside and let him in, my heart pounding. He hesitated for a moment before walking into the living room, glancing around the space as if he were seeing me for the first time. We sat down across from each other, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. It felt like we were both waiting for the other to speak first. Finally, Garrison broke the silence. "I know I don't deserve this, but I'm asking for another chance. Not just to be your son, but to show you that I can be the person you raised me to be. I know I've hurt you. I know I've failed you, but please know I'm trying to change." I looked at him, really looked at him. The same face I had watched grow up. The same boy who once ran into my arms, his little hands filled with dandelions. But now, sitting in front of me, he seemed like a stranger who had taken too much from me, someone I wasn't sure I could trust anymore. "I want to believe you, Garrison," I said softly, my voice trembling. "I really do. But trust isn't something I can give so easily. It's not just about words. It's about actions." He nodded, his face pale. I know it's going to take time. I'm ready to show you. I'm ready to do whatever it takes." And for the first time in a long time, I felt that flicker of hope again. But this time I wasn't rushing into it. I wasn't going to let him back in just because he said the right things. I needed to see the change. I needed him to prove it. "You've got a long way to go, Garrison," I said firmly. "But I'll give you a chance. Not for me. For you." His eyes softened and for a moment he looked like the boy I used to know. "Thank you, Mom. That means more than you'll ever know. What happens now? Can Garrison really change? Or is this just another lie? And what will it take for me to truly forgive him?" Stay tuned because the next chapter will reveal whether or not redemption is possible, or if the damage is too deep to heal. Keep watching and remember, no one's story is ever truly over. The weeks that followed were strange. I didn't know what I expected from Garrison's apology, but it wasn't this. It wasn't this slow, uncertain dance of attempting to rebuild something that had been shattered. First, I thought maybe it was just a phase. Maybe he was saying all the right things to make me feel better, to ease his own guilt. But slowly, little by little, something began to shift. He called more often, texted more. He didn't just send the obligatory, "How are you?" messages anymore. Now he asked about my day. He asked what I was doing, how I was feeling. And it wasn't just because he was trying to make up for lost time. It felt like he actually wanted to know. But I wasn't ready to just fall back into the same rhythm with him. I couldn't let myself be swept up in the past, in the version of Garrison I had once known. That person had let me down in the worst way. And though his attempts were sincere, I wasn't sure how much of me was still left to give. I'd been burned too deeply. I think he knew that. And I think that's why he tried so hard, because every time he reached out, every time he showed up on my doorstep or sent me a message, he was trying to prove that he was more than the man who had introduced me as his housekeeper, who had abandoned me when I was at my lowest. But could one man truly change that much? One evening, Garrison invited me out to dinner. I hesitated at first. A part of me wanted to decline, to keep him at arm's length, to keep him from getting too close. I'd been hurt and it was hard to trust again. But there was another part of me, the part that remembered the dandelions, the part that wanted so desperately to believe in redemption, that said maybe this time he's worth it. I agreed. When we met at the restaurant, Garrison looked nervous. He was always the confident one, the one with the polished smile, the one who knew exactly what to say. But now, as he greeted me at the door, I saw something different. Something human. Something real. "Mom," he said softly, his voice almost uncertain. "I'm glad you came." I smiled, but it was shaky. "Me too." We sat down at a small table near the window, the sun just beginning to dip below the horizon. It was one of those moments that felt like it could go either way. The waiter came by to take our order, and Garrison kept glancing at me, almost as though he were waiting for me to say something first. I wasn't sure what to say. The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was tentative. It was the silence of two people trying to find their way back to something they had lost. Finally, Garrison spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About how I treated you. About the things I said. And I wish I could take it all back, but I know I can't. All I can do is try to be better. To show you that I can be the son you deserve." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the truth was, every word felt like it was wrapped in a kind of fragility. Like he was walking on eggshells, afraid that if he said the wrong thing, he'd lose me all over again. And maybe I was the one who was doing the walking too. I didn't want to fall for his words again. Not without seeing the change. "I don't know if I can ever forget what happened, Garrison," I said, my voice quiet, steady. "I don't know if I can just pretend it didn't hurt. But I want to try. I want to see if you're really different. If you're really ready to show me you've changed." He nodded, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen in him in years. Not just regret, but something deeper. The kind of remorse that only comes when you realize the depth of the pain you've caused. "I will, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll show you. I'll prove it to you. I'll do whatever it takes." I took a deep breath and looked at him. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were having a real conversation. Not just the surface-level stuff. Not the fake pleasantries or the empty apologies. But something honest. Something raw. The waiter returned with our food, and for a while we ate in silence. There was still so much left unspoken. So much left unresolved between us. But in that moment I didn't need to say anything more. I just needed to be present. To take in what was happening. To allow myself to feel the small, fragile thread of hope that was beginning to form between us. I wasn't ready to fully forgive him. But maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe that there could be a path forward. That we could find our way back to each other. The night ended, and as we said our goodbyes outside the restaurant, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of peace. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a magic fix. But it was something. Something real. I'm proud of you, Garrison, I said softly, as he gave me a hesitant smile. He didn't say anything in response. He didn't need to. His eyes said it all. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was looking at my son again. The real Garrison, the one who had been buried under layers of ego and pride, but who was starting to emerge from the shadows. I'll see you soon, Mom, he said, and his voice was softer now, almost gentle. I'll be here, I replied, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. As I walked back to my car, I took a deep breath and let the cool night air fill my lungs. The road to forgiveness wasn't a straight line. It wasn't even a road I knew how to navigate. But for the first time, I felt like I was on the right path. Maybe Garrison had changed. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. But even if we couldn't, no matter what the future held, I knew one thing for sure. I had learned to stand on my own, to reclaim my life, to live for me. And that was enough. What happens now? Is Garrison truly ready to change? Or is this just another false hope? Will our relationship ever truly heal? Stay with me, because what comes next will reveal whether redemption is possible. Keep watching. The story isn't over yet. The days after that dinner with Garrison felt like walking on a tightrope. I could feel the shift between us, the tension of trying to rebuild something fragile and broken. We were still treading lightly, cautiously, but the small steps we were taking felt like progress, however slow. I spent a lot of time reflecting. Not just on Garrison's apology, but on everything I'd been through. The pain, the betrayal, the years of pretending that everything was fine when I knew deep down it wasn't. But now I was in a new chapter. A chapter that had been forced on me, yes, but one where I was finally learning to live for myself. I was still unpacking the emotional baggage piece by piece. The condo was coming together slowly but surely, and so was I. Garrison had reached out more than I expected. Calls, texts, invitations to meet up. It wasn't just about checking in anymore. He was trying, and I could see it. I didn't know if it would ever be enough to heal the wounds, but I didn't want to shut him out completely. I couldn't. But neither could I forget how he had made me feel. One morning as I sat with my coffee, a message from Garrison popped up. It was simple, yet it struck me. Mom, I've been thinking. I know I don't have the right to ask, but I was hoping we could spend some time together. Maybe come by and see Breen and Ansley? I know they've missed you. Breen and Ansley. My grandchildren. It had been months since I'd seen them, and I hadn't realized how much I missed them until that very moment. Garrison's words were a small olive branch, but it felt like something bigger. Something that showed that he was starting to remember what truly mattered. I had my doubts, of course, about everything. But deep down I wanted to believe that there was still a chance. That this family wasn't lost forever. I texted back. I'd love to see them. I'll stop by tomorrow. The following day, I drove to Garrison's house. My heart beat a little faster than usual. A mixture of excitement and fear. What would it be like stepping back into that house? A house that had once felt so full of love, now filled with ghosts of what used to be. But I didn't turn away. Not this time. When I arrived, Garrison was waiting outside, looking a little nervous. He smiled when he saw me, but it wasn't the same confident smile I had once known. It was softer, hesitant, but real. Hey, Mom, he said, his voice gentle. Hey, Garrison, I replied, forcing a smile despite the knot in my stomach. He led me inside, and as we walked through the house, the quiet was almost suffocating. It wasn't the same place anymore. It was cold, distant. Sloane wasn't home. She had apparently gone out with the kids, which left Garrison and me alone. I was fine with that. I tried to focus on the kids to remind myself why I was here. And then from the living room, I heard the sound of little feet running down the hallway. Breen and Ansley came into view, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. They were a little older than I remembered, their faces more mature, but their smiles were still the same. Grandma! Breen shouted, running toward me and throwing her arms around me. I crouched down and hugged her tightly, the weight of the past few months lifting just a little. Oh, how I've missed you, I whispered into her hair. Ansley was a little more reserved, but she came over and gave me a quick hug, her eyes wide, as though she wasn't sure what to make of this sudden reunion. Grandma, we thought you weren't coming back, she said softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I'm here now, sweetheart. I said, brushing a lock of hair from her face. And I'm not going anywhere. We spent the afternoon together, playing games, catching up, just enjoying the simple pleasure of being around family. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, moments when the pain of the past seemed to bubble up to the surface. But there were also moments of laughter, of connection, of remembering what it had felt like before everything fell apart. Later, as the kids went upstairs to play, Garrison and I found ourselves in the kitchen. The air was thick with unspoken words, but for the first time in a long while it felt less strained. "Thank you for this, Mom," he said, his voice quieter now. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I just want to keep trying, to show you that I can be the son you deserve." I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't sure how to respond. But I knew one thing for sure. Garrison had changed. He wasn't the same person he was when he hid me away, when he introduced me as the housekeeper. But could that change ever be enough? Could it ever heal the years of hurt, the feeling of being invisible, the years of love that had been lost? "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you, Garrison," I said, my voice steady but raw. "But I want to try. I want to see if we can rebuild what we had. If it's even possible." He looked at me, his face softening. "We'll figure it out, Mom. I swear we will." The doorbell rang then, and it was Breen coming to tell us that they were heading out for ice cream. The moment had passed, the heavy air between us settling just a little. But it was still there. The hurt, the doubt, the uncertainty. As I walked out the door to join them, I felt a strange sense of peace. I didn't know if this was the beginning of something new, or if it was just another false hope. But I was willing to try. Not for Garrison, not for anyone else, but for me, for my own healing. I wasn't sure how long it would take. Maybe it would take years. Maybe it would take forever. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was starting to find my way back. Back to myself. Back to the woman I had once been. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. What's next for Garrison and me? Can we rebuild the trust that's been shattered? Can I ever fully forgive him? Stay tuned, because the journey isn't over, and the next chapter will reveal whether we can truly move on from the past, or if the damage is too deep to heal. Keep watching. The next part will answer these questions and more. The days after the ice cream outing passed by in a blur. Garrison and I continued to make small strides forward. The awkwardness was still there, but it wasn't as sharp as before. It was more like an old scar, tender when touched but not as raw as it had once been. I wasn't sure what to expect from him anymore. Each time he reached out, I found myself wondering if this was the moment that would truly show if he was sincere. But with each interaction, I started to see glimpses of the son I had raised, the one who wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, the one who had cared for me once, even if he had lost his way. One evening, just after dinner, Garrison called. The sound of his voice brought a mix of relief and wariness. "Mom," he said, his tone hesitant, like he wasn't sure how I would respond. "I've been thinking. I think I should tell Sloan about what's been going on, about what happened with us. I know I can't undo it, but I don't want there to be any more secrets between us." I felt a lump form in my throat. The thought of Garrison being so open, of him finally stepping up in a way I hadn't seen in years, made my heart ache with something bittersweet. It wasn't just about the apology anymore. It was about him taking responsibility. For the first time in a long time, I believed he might actually want to make things right. "Are you sure you're ready for that, Garrison?" I asked, my voice soft. "You've come so far, but it won't be easy. Sloan. She's been with you through all of this, and she's been a part of everything too. It's not just about me anymore." "I know," he replied, his voice steady despite the weight of the words. "But I've been hiding behind her. I've let everything slide, and I've never really let her see what's been going on in my head. It's time to be honest with her. With both of you." The decision hung in the air, heavy with the gravity of it all. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a turning point. I didn't know if Sloan would understand, if she would see it the way Garrison did. But I hoped that by facing the truth together, they could start a new chapter of their own, just like I was trying to do with him. "I'm proud of you, Garrison," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This is the first step. Just don't rush it. Take your time. And whatever happens, I'll be here. The next few days were filled with that quiet kind of anticipation. It was as though we were all holding our breath, waiting for Garrison's confrontation with Sloane. I didn't ask him for updates. This was something he needed to do on his own. It wasn't my place to interfere, no matter how much I wanted to know what was happening behind closed doors. Then one afternoon my phone rang. It was Garrison. "Mom," he said, his voice a little more strained than usual. "I did it. I told her everything. She wasn't happy. She was hurt. But she's not as angry as I thought she'd be." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "How do you feel?" I asked quietly, wanting to know how he was processing it all. "I feel like a weight's been lifted," he admitted, his voice a little shaky. "It wasn't easy, but I think it was the right thing to do." "I'm proud of you," I repeated, my words firm and sure. "You did the right thing, Garrison. Now you just have to keep showing up. For her. For yourself. For me." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when he spoke again, his tone was different. Softer. I think I might be ready to start over. Not just with Sloane, but with you too. If you're willing." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle into my chest. Could I truly start over? Could I ever truly heal the wound he had created? I wasn't sure. But what I did know was that the door had been opened just a crack. And maybe that was enough to start. "I'll be here, Garrison," I said, my voice steady. "But it's going to take time. I need time. I need to see that this is real. That you're really ready to do the work." "I am," he said, the conviction in his voice clear. "I promise. I'm ready." The following weeks passed with a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. Garrison and Sloane were still figuring things out, but there was a new openness between them. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than before. I knew that Garrison had a long road ahead of him, but for the first time in a while I believed he was truly trying. And I was trying too. I was learning to trust again, learning to forgive not just him but myself. I had spent so many years focusing on everyone else's needs, making sure they were taken care of, that I had forgotten to take care of myself. But now I was learning to be the person I had once been, a woman who wasn't defined by her sacrifices, but by her own strength. One afternoon, Garrison invited me to dinner again. This time it wasn't just about trying to fix what had been broken. It was about being together, moving forward as a family. He was taking the initiative to show me that he was ready to make up for the lost time. When I walked into the restaurant, I was greeted with the sight of Garrison sitting with a wide smile, his eyes bright, like the weight of the world had finally lifted off his shoulders. And beside him was Sloane, a little more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. There was still a distance between us, but it was slowly closing. "Mom," Garrison said when I sat down, his voice warm. "I've missed this. Just us. It's been too long." "I've missed it too," I said, my heart swelling with a quiet hope. "It feels good to be here. With you. With both of you." The evening unfolded with small conversations, laughter, and the slow building of trust. It wasn't perfect. There were still unspoken words, and there were still moments where the past reared its ugly head. But there was something new in the air. Something fresh. A sense that we could find our way back to each other. A sense that maybe, just maybe, we could heal. What happens next? Will Garrison truly keep his promises? And will I finally be able to fully forgive him? Stay tuned, because the journey isn't over yet. The next chapter will show whether we can truly move on from the past, and if this family can rebuild. Keep watching. The most important parts are still to come. The months that followed were a slow but steady march toward healing. Garrison kept his promises. He continued to show up not just for me but for himself, for the family. He and Sloane worked through their issues, and while it wasn't perfect, they were making progress. I could see the change in him, the way he listened more, the way he took responsibility for his actions. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. And that was enough. I continued to focus on my own healing too. I learned that forgiveness wasn't a one-time event. It was something that took time, and sometimes it meant forgiving yourself first. I stopped holding on to the anger and hurt that had defined my relationship with Garrison for so long. I started to let go of the fear that if I forgave him, I would lose myself again. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the past would resurface, when the old wounds would throb, reminding me of how deeply I had been hurt. But I realized something important. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with the pain, understanding its lessons, and choosing to move forward despite it. One day, as I sat in my new condo, looking out at the view that had once seemed so lonely, I realized how far I had come. This place, this life was mine. And it was beautiful. Garrison came to visit one afternoon, bringing Breen and Ansley with him. We spent the day together, playing games, talking, laughing, and for the first time in a long time I felt whole again. I wasn't defined by what I had lost. I wasn't defined by the betrayal or the hurt. I was defined by my strength, by my ability to stand up again and again and rebuild. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Garrison said as he sat beside me on the couch. His voice was sincere, and there was a look in his eyes that told me he truly meant it. "I'm proud of you too, Garrison," I replied, my heart full. "We've come a long way." And we really had. There was still work to do, still healing to be had, but we were getting there. One step at a time. As the kids ran around the house, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. The family I thought I had lost was slowly coming back together. And this time it wasn't about perfection. It was about love, acceptance, and the willingness to grow. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the valley below. It was a new day, a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time I felt truly alive. I had reclaimed my life. And no one, not even the people who had tried to break me, could take that away. If you've ever been through betrayal, if you've ever felt like you lost everything, know this. Your story isn't over. The journey to healing may be long, but every step forward is worth it. Don't let the past define you. Reclaim your life. And remember, your worth was never in anyone else's hands. It was always in yours. Keep fighting, keep growing, and keep loving yourself. Because the best chapters of your life are still ahead.